Our opening thought is a short one today from Barbara Ehrenreich. From Living with a Wild God, a non-believer's search for the truth about everything. She writes, in fact, the idea of a God who is both all-powerful and all-good is a logical impossibility. Our next reading comes from Alfred North Whitehead from his book, Adventure of Ideas. A vision of God that is different than the classical omnipotence view. Whitehead writes, God does not create the world, God saves it, or more accurately, God is the poet of the world, with tender patience leading it by God's vision of truth, beauty, and goodness. Our next reading comes from Carl Sagan, from a keynote address that he gave in 1987. In science, it often happens that scientists say, you know, that's a really good argument. My position is mistaken. And then they would actually change their minds, and you never hear that old view from them again. They really do it. It doesn't happen as often as it should because scientists are human and change is sometimes painful, but it happens every day. I cannot recall the last time something like that happened in politics or religion. It's very rare that a senator replies, that's a good argument. I will now change my political affiliation. Many adherents of the Abrahamic religions hold a belief that God or the divine or whatever you would like to call an entity such as that possesses unlimited power. Unlimited power. And this discourse is going to explore the many problematic implications of such a belief, especially at a time when our taking responsibility for addressing the challenges for our human and ecological communities has never been more urgent. If there is something like what we call God as the source of the cosmos, it is extremely difficult to logically hold together the beliefs that such an entity is both all-powerful and all-good. Even defenders of theism recognize this difficulty, and they wrestle with attempting to understand and explain it. To borrow a famous line from I Love Lucy's Ricky Ricardo, if there is an omnipotent or all-powerful entity that is the source and sustainer of the universe, then such an entity would have some explaining to do. I didn't bring the Cuban accent with me, sorry. Surely an all-good and all-powerful entity could create a cosmos without war, disease, slavery, and genocide. Surely such an omnibenevolent and omnipotent entity could create a cosmos that is not brutal and violent, and in which it is not necessary for beings to kill and devour one another in order to simply live. Cosmic Hunger Games don't sit too well with the notion of a simultaneously all-good and all-powerful God. It's actually a sign, I think, of intellectual and spiritual humility to not simply accept the metaphysical assumptions and explanations of the past about the nature of God's power, based on an appeal to the authority of the persons who originally made those assumptions and dogmatized those explanations. Past assumptions about divine power and the worship of that power often have pernicious effects on our lives and our communities today. Humanity is, I think, much too preoccupied with celebrating and worshiping power. Celebrating and worshiping power in our religions, politics, and economics, rather than emphasizing love, empathy, and justice in every aspect of our lives as we strive together for beloved community. The preoccupation with purity, power, and patriarchy within so much of our religious expression creates hierarchical power structures that are not conducive to supporting a vibrant and participatory democracy. Our preoccupation with power over love and justice is damaging both the well-being of our human and ecological communities. As you know, I live in Oklahoma City, and we have a weekly newspaper that is published out of the wealthiest area of Oklahoma City. I won't call it out by name, but there's a very wealthy area in the middle north part of Oklahoma City, and there's a weekly newspaper that comes out of that area of the city that caters to the rich and powerful, and it publishes 2 annual lists of the power rankings of persons living in the state of Oklahoma. So twice a year it publishes a list. The first list is called the 50 most powerful persons in Oklahoma. The 50 most powerful persons in Oklahoma. I think these people are voted in to be the most powerful persons by their friends and family and others that see them as being, and they are influential people in the state of Oklahoma usually. And then there's another list, the 50 most powerful young professionals in Oklahoma. So if you don't make the 50 most powerful list, you can make the 50 most powerful young professionals in Oklahoma. Note the emphasis on power. They could have chosen many other adjectives: influential, good, ethical, kind, compassionate, and many other adjectives, but they chose powerful because they know that in the end we have a tendency to worship and praise power. And it makes the wealthy and powerful people who make the list feel even more powerful by being publicly recognized for the power that they possess. Isn't that special? Aren't we powerful?
They are.
Yes. U.S. Americans in particular are obsessed with the value of power, often to the neglect of the value of love and justice. We forget that power can only be truly good when it is expressed through love, for the sake of justice. It's not an accident, I don't think, that the first trillionaire, that's trillionaire, not billionaire. It is not an accident that the first trillionaire lives in the United States. The existence of a trillionaire is only possible in a society in which power has been exalted above love and justice. It's also absolutely not an accident that the first trillionaire is a truly horrific human being.
Amen.
But I think we have to note that our religious views about power contribute to the context in which such a thing as a trillionaire can happen. Our religious views about the matter of the value and expression of power in our world and in our communities have an impact on our communities. If there is a benevolent and loving being, as so many of our religions espouse that there is, or energy or mystery that brought forth and is sustaining the cosmos, I don't believe that such a being would desire worship of its power from the intelligent and sentient life that has evolved in the universe. If such a being or energy or mystery exists, I can see that it would long perhaps for expressions of love, compassion, empathy, kindness, grace, and justice within beloved community, but worship in the sense of being subservient and praising and kneeling and bowing down before divine power does not seem to be what a good and loving being or entity would desire. It's important to note that adherents of religions that emphasize divine power so much over divine love tend to be the most supportive of autocratic forms of government. It's as if they want, it's not as if, they want a theocracy. The rise of white Christian nationalism, for example, is connected to a preoccupation with divine power and what this power can do for white Christians rather than focusing on love and justice for everyone in beloved community. Fixation on God's omnipotence and the concomitant notion that God is in control of all things is also often merely a way of shirking our human responsibility to do all that we can to care for our world. The notion of an all-powerful God who is in control of how everything plays out in the world often leads persons who adhere to such a view of God's omnipotence to not fully recognize our own moral responsibility to do all in our power to preserve and maximize value for all life. A mentality of God's got this can easily lead to a view that what ultimately happens in and to this world is not our responsibility because it's all in God's hands. Why worry about the climate crisis? Or why worry about nuclear annihilation even if God is ultimately in control of everything? God's got this. The way forward, I think, to responsible participation in building a just and beloved community will not be forged by worshiping and celebrating the power of a divine being or the power of human beings. It will not be forged by giving up our human responsibility, by putting it all in God's hands. A just and beloved community will only come when we value persons and when we value the lives of other than human beings over power and over profit. It will only come when the expression of love and justice is at the core of every aspect of our lives. It will only come when we stop worshiping and celebrating power over love and justice. May it be so.